hello and welcome to today's webinar, Emotional Intelligence in the Workplace, hosted by Judson University. My name is Katie and I will be moderating today. And if you're not familiar with us, Judson is a 4-year nonprofit university based in Elgin, and we are a corporate partner of your company. So to begin our webinar, I'd like to introduce you to our presenter today. This afternoon, we are lucky enough to be joined by Dr. Teri Stein-Merrill, who has been a professor at Judson for 27 years. And not only is she a professor, but she chairs 3 of our programs. She chairs the Human Services Administration Master's and Bachelor's, as well as our Applied Psychology Bachelor's degree program here at Judson. In addition to that, she is an all-around accomplished lady with a doctorate and a long career of working as an HR consultant. So I think we can all agree that she is more than qualified to teach us a few things about emotional intelligence and why it is so important in today's workplace. Now, Dr. Stein-Merrill will be covering a lot of ground today, but don't worry, we will have a time for you to ask any questions you may have on the topics she's discussing. So if you take a look at the bottom of your screen, you will see a Q&A icon. If you have questions during her presentation, please go ahead and type them in that icon. And toward the end of the webinar, we will have a Q&A session. So with that, I am going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Stein-Merrill, and she will take it from here.
All righty. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome. I am so pleased to be able to spend a little time with you this afternoon here in Illinois, and to be able to talk about a very, very special part of who we are. And that's emotional intelligence, the big EI. In front of you, you see a basic definition of what this particular words represent. And basically, it is our abilities to understand, use, and most importantly, manage those emotions. And we want to manage those in, guess what? A positive manner. I haven't met with anyone who said, I just can't wait to be with someone who's negative in nature. So we're going to look at various strategies, various ways to promote communicating positively. And it has many, many benefits, namely reducing stress. So I want to ask you guys, how many of you tend to be stressed out every now and then? All righty, if I could see you, I would see some hands going up for sure. So we will look at ways that we will manage stress, in addition to communicating, not only effectively at work, but guess what? Also in our own communities and home. So let's begin. All righty, the first thing you see in front of you, we always like to look at the good and the bads of our world. And these are habits that we typically form throughout our lifetimes. I want to start with those emotional intelligence bad stuff. How about that? Now, I'm going to have a job for you. I'm going to encourage each of you to kind of quiz yourselves as we go through each of the slides today. So when you see something that speaks to you or something that you know, oh yeah, that's me, make a little mental note of it, okay? And towards the end, we'll go back and evaluate it. And again, look at some of those things that you're doing well, and perhaps some of those things that we could manage to do a little bit better. So the bad. We've done quite a bit of research, not only in higher education, but also through my work in corporate America, to identify at least 4 or 5 major bad things as well as good things in terms of practices related to emotional intelligence. So you have them listed here, and you can see number 1, becoming stressed easily. How many of you, when something happens, it takes just a second to hear your heart pump a little louder? Okay, or you begin to kind of getting a little anxious there. Yes, becoming very stressed in a short period of time, and sometimes over the most kind of nothing to be stressed about things. So if that's something that you can identify with, put a little check by it. Another very important one that we identify as being bad would be making assumptions. We all do it. But how many of you tend to make those assumptions over and over again? And because of those assumptions, you just naturally kind of stress yourselves out. Yeah. So is that you? Do you typically make an assumption when someone tells you, for example, that they're going to have a project on a set date, on a set deadline, and they've told you this 4 or 5 times, and guess what? it's still not happening. So the sixth time, do we kind of make that assumption that, yeah, it probably won't happen? All right, if that's you, check it out. Now, the third one is probably one of my favorite ones, holding grudges. You did this for 6 times. I will never forgive you. I just don't believe it's going to happen. How many of us hold those grudges? Yeah, sometimes we do it unconsciously, but nevertheless, they're grudges. These are bad emotional behaviors, which typically leads to stress. And of course, if you hold that grudge long enough, you will oftentimes feel misunderstood. Have you ever felt that someone just didn't get you? It's like, man, we're just on a different page. I just don't want to deal with this anymore. Being misunderstood is truly a problem, not only at work, but definitely in the workplace. And the last one, unaware of those triggers, those things that you know will cause you to snap. I'm going to share with you my favorite trigger in a couple of slides later. But for right now, look at those 5 practices that we know are pretty bad in terms of controlling those emotions and put a little check by maybe 1 or 2. And it might be something that I didn't mention. You may want to just write it in. All righty. I always like to go to the good next. When we are in charge, when we are managing our emotions, guess what happens? We pay attention to our feelings. Yeah, we do. And not only to our feelings, we're more in tune to identify how others are receiving us. Guys, perception is pretty close to reality. Let's just face it. When we're in a good emotional place, guess what? We are able to discuss our concerns with others. Yeah. How many of you can actually say there's that person out there, your go-to person? When there's something that's being misunderstood, you can connect with that person and you know that they can hear you and understand what you're going through. And then finally, working to manage emotions. One of the questions that was posed was looking at ideas concerning those myths related to this one. And I think about it because we oftentimes feel that we need to do this or we're able to do this in 5 minutes or just like that. Soon as this presentation is over, I'm going to go in there and be able to manage my emotions. Not, hate to tell you that, but not. Guess what? It takes work to manage our emotions. Now, we know that it takes anywhere from 4 to 6 weeks to perhaps change your behavior. So maybe use that as a monitoring tool, something for you to gauge how well you're doing and perhaps other things that you need to work on. So let's move along, share a couple of other things with you. When we talk about benefits, it's also very important to have a reason for our seasons. Yeah. And people have always asked mostly about those professional types of reasons to be really in tune with your emotional intelligence. But I want to start by looking at those personal things. We're just going to go from right to left this morning. So I want you to look at some of those things that are personal, that really go hand in hand with how we communicate professionally. The first one, again, very similar to the other slide. When you're in control, the benefits is, guess what? You're going to handle those stressors in a very strategic way. Yes, you will. You will also be very self-motivating. You can hear things that perhaps would trigger you, but guess what? That's okay because you have learned to manage those intrinsically. That is so important, people, to be able to hear something, to see it, and what? Not react. Being self-motivated to focus in on those things that really matter. All righty, you guys can check this one out because I know it's mine too. Sleeping and eating better, probably an essential benefit for managing one's emotions. So tell me, how many of you are getting at least 7 hours of sleep a night? And I'm talking REM sleep, at least 2 of those 7 hours. All righty, if you're not, That's going to be one of the things that we need to work on for sure. And to eat better. What do I mean by eating better? Well, we all have our philosophies of that one. And I tend to look at balance. So I'm going to encourage you. What are those eating habits? Things that are a part of what makes your energy. Because if you're sleeping well and if you're eating, guess what? You're going to have more energy. You ever felt like sometimes you sleep and you wake up and you still feel tired? Yeah, that's that emotional piece just not really where it needs to be. So again, moving more and more towards the idea of being energized. It helps us in terms of controlling those emotional intelligence. All righty. And then finally, the willingness to pay it forward. I always say when we're given opportunities to improve ourselves, why not share that with other people? And I have one that I'll share with you later today as well. There's some little tricks along the way, so hang in there with me. The next part, going to professional. Again, it's really cool working in academia because for 9 months, I get to teach individuals both at the undergraduate and graduate level. And guess what? During the summers, I tend to get an opportunity to work with major corporations. And in those corporations, I get a chance to work with people who are typically trying to move up the corporate ladder, those who have gotten degrees and they're basically trying to leverage their new abilities, their new credentials in order to get a different job. So what does that really mean? Some of the things in HR that are essential to you moving forward would be, guess what? Finding out if you're hireable. Yeah, and a benefit for emotional intelligence is just that. These people tend to be 7 out of 10 times more hireable than someone who's out of control. Another one would be accountability. It is so important to know that your manager, your direct reports, even the people that you're working with can count on you. And typically they will let you know in many ways that indeed you are a person that they can believe in, that when you say you're going to get the job done, you will. When you have control of your emotions, guess what? That's a given. In corporate America and just in work in general, the only thing that is constant is change. And the change that happens most frequently is being trainable. Yes. So I hope regardless of your level, you have an open mind, controlling those emotional types of feelings can help you to become trainable. I know now with 27 years, I still feel that I have so much to learn. And being in tune with what those things are, being open to learn is so essential to your success. Am I promotable? Yeah. You have to identify your culture that you're working in. And again, to establish what is that definition? What are they considering to be those checkoffs to make sure that you're not only doing the job that keeps you accountable, but guess what? You're doing the job to move to the next level. And a big part of managing that is keeping a really good idea of how I'm feeling, what those perceptions are that others have of me, and how I can use that to become promotable. And in corporate America, one of the things that's really an issue today is keeping good people. We want to figure out a way to retain people. And needless to say, those who tend to be managing their stressors, not only at home, but in the place of work, those are the ones that we depend on. I have a real quick story to tell you. I really could talk for a long time, but I know that my time is a little bit limited. And I do want to spend some time answering some of the specific questions that you may have. One of my most recent consulting opportunities was, believe it or not, with good old Google. Of all places. That was so cool to be contacted if someone wanted some basic information about interviewing and recruiting and what would be some of those things that they would need to do in order to enter this wonderful world of Google. And so we went through a couple of strategies, and make a long story short, believe it or not, this individual was actually offered a position at Google. So I would say, well, tell me, what was it? Was it your resume? Was it your, education, your prior experiences? What do you think led them to ask you to come and join them? And it didn't take but a couple of seconds, and this individual said, well, you know what? That's a great question. And for the most part, he said, the company itself doesn't do the hiring. It's the people that you're working with. So he felt and was sharing with me the key thing is to identify, these are those emotional intelligent perceptions, identify what this person is looking for, begin to meet them halfway in terms of what they're asking of you. And sincerity, he said, was truly a plus in terms of getting this job with Google. I have so many fun stories, some good ones and some bad ones. And so I just wanted to share that with you because a big part of what you're going to find with emotional intelligence is, guess what? It is a skill that can be learned. All righty, let's continue. What else do we have? Here's my little special fun thing. It's a little bit of a technique that I have used to control myself. Remember, we talked a little bit about those wonderful triggers. Remember the triggers that we talked about? Well, some of the triggers are better seen than talked about. So I want to share that with you. But before I do, it's important, again, to kind of look at what yours are. If you can, take a few minutes and just maybe jot down some of those things that when you know you're getting upset, when you know that there's stressors that are kind of all over the place with you, what happens? For example, I typically will develop a little rash. In addition to my migraines, that's a trigger. See, triggers can oftentimes come from within. It doesn't necessarily have to be from something that someone else has said. There are those physical triggers. So mine will be my little itch. So I sit back and I kind of think through the day or through the afternoon, or maybe what's going on in my life to identify why am I all of a sudden itching, or why do I feel this migraine coming? So I want you to write it down, take a few minutes. I know I'm talking a mile a minute, but write maybe some of those triggers down. And if you like to, go ahead and put down, how do you handle it? Because a big part of what we want to do is not only identify those emotional things that are going crazy, but ways to manage it. So write those down, begin to think about it, okay? I'm going to recommend a great book. I'm not sure if you can see this or not, but it's a book called by Daniel Coleman, and it's actually called Social Intelligence. It has many different tools, assessments, things that can truly help you to begin to think about ways to manage your own emotional intelligence. So again, one of the books that we use in several of our graduate programs is a quick read, and I love it because it really does help us to look at practical applications. No one wants to come up with something that is so difficult to do until you give up before you start. So again, just a great recommendation for you to begin to think about. All righty, practice makes perfect. And if you notice the word, is practice spelled correctly? I hope someone picked that up. You're good. I hope it didn't stress you out. It's just, I'm sure you guys, she mentioned that, but guys, this is gonna take time. It's a process. It's like anything else in life. It takes planning. It takes making mistakes. It takes doing over again until we get it right. So practice this. You have a list of things by now. What are some of those ways that we will practice our behaviors? Give yourself 4 to 6 weeks. Some of us will take even longer than 6 weeks, but trust me, if you don't see a little bit of change in yourselves in about 6 weeks, I would ask you to kind of maybe start over again and examine what's going on. My favorite saying is listen to learn. And how about this? Learn to listen. Same words. Listen to learn. When we're listening to learn and of course learning to listen, what's going on? We are actually controlling those abilities that relate to emotional intelligence. So when you learn to listen, not only to what you're saying, but also to what others are perhaps saying to you. And most important, listen to what they are not saying. Yeah, that's just as important. We call those meta communications, oral communications. So your job is to listen, to learn, and again, learning to listen. Well, know your values. I just can't say enough about values. If you had to identify 3 things that are important to you, write them down. What would those 3 things would be? Getting a promotion, getting, what can I say? Getting a promotion. People think about that one a lot. A new job. That might be one of your values. A value is something that is important to you. It could be something related to a personal value. Now, I will give you a little tip. If you will, if you have your cell phones, take them, pull them out right now. Yep, this is a work in progress. Nobody gets a chance to sit back on this one. Pull them out. This is how you can figure out, you can measure things that is or maybe of value to you. What I want you to do is go in and tap into your text. Go and look at your text. You got some in there for sure. I see 4 or 5 staring me in the eye right now. And you know what I'm going to ask you to do is to maybe scroll down and identify at least 5 of the texts that you have in front of you. 5 most current texts. Now, here's the thing. Guess what? Those are people, ideas, concepts. These are things that are of value to you. Yeah, just one indicator. What's of value to you? You can do the same thing with your emails. If you're a person who journal, you can do the same thing with your journaling. Go back and look from day to day to see consistencies, see trends, see perhaps things that are important. Because guess what, guys? Things that we value, we're going to manage those and we're going to find ways to control that because that represents who we are. Last but not least, get a mentor. Life should not be spent without a mentor. Who is a mentor? Well, truly it's not a parent. It's not a spouse. Nah, a mentor is someone who you respect in terms of sharing candid information with you. And I say that because I know for me, with my children, they will typically say anything and agree to anything because I'm mom. Yeah, not because perhaps it's true. So this mentor, especially in the workplace, this could be someone who is maybe 2 or 3 levels above you. It could be someone from a different organization to mentor you. This is someone who's going to give you the kind of advice that will help you to grow. Your mentor is also a person who can be very resourceful. They know people, people hire people that they know. So again, if you don't have a mentor, think about who that person would be. I have at least 3. I know I'm needy. I have at least 3, but identify at least 1 or 2 mentors that can help you look at the different types of things that you plan to do. And I'm hoping that each of you are planning to look at your list and to work on those and to begin to set up how you plan to successfully manage those emotions. Now, without further ado, this is one strategy that I have done from time to time. Again, it's paying it forward. I do it with many of my friends, my colleagues, people who are just really interested in becoming more in tune with who they are, who want to be more physically as well as mentally, emotionally stable. So check her out.
Hello, beautiful ladies. How are you today? Welcome back My name is Teri, and today we will be looking at several activities that will help you to become strong, toned, and filled with energy. So let's begin. As always, it's very, very important to drink water. Water is so important to your exercise success. So make sure that you have water available and to drink water not only during your activities but throughout the day. Water truly does give us energy. It also helps to lubricate those muscles. So drink up. Fantastic.
Okay, can you see the water? Hey, very essential to managing our emotional stressors. So I encourage you, if you're not drinking water throughout the day, make it become a part of who you are. It is truly essential to our success. So at this time, you see the Q&A, and I really want to hear from you. Maybe you just want to share some of those things that after listening to the presentation that you're thinking about doing and perhaps maybe need a little encouragement to do. Take a few minutes if you have some of those, share those at this time, or perhaps you may have other questions.
Thanks, Dr. Stein. It looks like we did have some questions come in earlier. So
Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and ask you this one. This says businesses push employees to create measurable goals, but how can you measure emotional intelligence in the workplace?
Okay, such an awesome question, very relevant to who we are. And you know, when you talk about measuring anything, the first thing that comes to mind is to identify quantitative measures. What I mean by quantitative, something that if, for example, you're going to drink, I don't know, five cups of water a day. What is the measurement? 5 cups. At the end of the day, how would we evaluate that success? So you're going to figure out, okay, out of the five cups of water, guess what? I actually successfully did drink 4. That's pretty good in terms of a percentage. So anything that you're measuring, it's important to have that quantitative data. I have a lot of people who will say, yeah, I'm going to start sleeping better soon. What is that telling me? Soon is when, soon is relative. Soon for some people would be in 10 minutes. Soon for others would be when I can get a chance to do it. And soon for others will be when I'm so exhausted that I don't have a choice. So, but when you put a specific quantitative measurement by whatever you're planning to do, it really does help to validate that you are currently doing it. Another tool that we often talk about with our students is to set up, we call them SMART goals. Write this down, the word SMART, S-M-A-R-T. You can look it up at any, and Google it, and you'll find all kinds of examples of what that means. And when we talk about SMART goals, number one, we're looking at being very specific. What, in terms of emotional intelligence, do I need to manage? I need to be able to not cry. This is an example, to not cry every time someone hurts my feelings. Or I'll be honest with you, this is one that I'll have a tendency to do. If someone tells me, oh, well, I didn't like the way you presented that concept, I would turn around in 2 seconds and say something like, well, I didn't like the way you did ABC. So again, that would be one of those things that I would want to work on managing, okay? And every time that trigger comes up that I actually say that, that's something that can be measured. So again, with the SMART goals, you want to be very, very specific in terms of what you're trying to measure. Your emotional, go back and look at that list again, and you may want to start with 1 or 2. I think a big part of when we're trying to make changes, we try to do too many at the same time. So I would encourage you, if you will, to maybe choose 1, 2 at most specific goals that you want to work on. We want to work toward identifying measurable outcomes. In other words, in 4 to 6 weeks, this is what I plan to do. And this is what the difference will look like. That's measuring it. Okay. And then a big part of what we want to do is to make sure that the resources are available, are attainable, are realistic. You know, sometimes we wish for these things and we look at emotional intelligence and we identify something that, guess what, guys, we have no control over. Yeah, that happens a lot. So make sure that the goals that you are setting up are attainable. In other words, they are goals that realistically can be accomplished. The worst thing we want to do is to set ourselves up for failure and look for those small successes along the way. So attainable, being realistic, again, your mentor can help you with that. Once you set these goals in place, to actually share those with someone and ask them, does this make sense? And if not, what are your recommendations? That's a part of being realistic. And then last but not least, we call it time bound. Now, for each of your goals, your emotional intelligence goals that you hope to work on, I have this thing about 4 to 6 weeks. I think anything, if you're trying and you're serious about it, you should see some progress within 4 to 6 weeks. You're not going to see it in 4 to 6 days. So give it at least 6 weeks, whatever those 3 or 4 things that you have in mind, give them that time measurement of about 6 weeks, and then regroup, look at what you have. The good thing about a SMART goal, it only gets smarter if you reevaluate, recalculate, and actually do some things in a different way. So I advocate measuring your goals by using the tool we call SMART, S-M-A-R-T. Just a really neat way to look at how to set up and manage those emotional intelligence strategies that I know you have come up with. Okay, next question.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Stein. We're actually at time, so I think we're going to move to the next slide. But if you have questions for Dr. Stein, I'm sure that she would welcome them in an email or a call. Now, a little bit about Judson University. As I mentioned at the top of the webinar, Judson is a corporate partner of your employer, which means that you do receive a tuition discount for our adult degree programs. And we offer 9 degrees within this program. And the great thing about them is that they really are built specifically for adults. So you can take your courses, like I mentioned, at our primary campus in Elgin, or on campus in Rockford 1 night a week, or you could even do them 100% online. We do have a few start dates coming up in November. And the great thing about starting next month is that you get to dip your toes into college and then take a nice break for the holidays. So if you want to learn more about Judson or the programs that we offer, certainly give our team a call at 888-741-4981 or visit our website at judsondegree.com. And we will leave this information up on the screen for a little bit longer so you can jot it down. But other than that, thank you again so much for attending today. And thank you so much, Dr. Stein, for your time and your expertise. And we will see you at our next webinar.